Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Heir of Broken Fate by Mads Rafferty. This is a very much a departure from me because I don't read Romantasy. I read fantasy, and I read sci-fi, and I read those types of genres. Romantasy is something I've not really tried or delved into, mostly because I didn't think I would love it. However, I have made it a personal goal of mine to try the various genres, to try reading new things, and I'm not opposed to reading Romantasy if it's done well. And so I had seen a bunch of YouTube videos from the author talking about the book, and I was like, you know what, I'll test it out. It's actually a self-pub book, which is kind of funny because I know a lot of self-pub enthusiasts, people who champion self-pub and indie pub, who would probably hate this book because this is very much a Romantasy. Anyway, this book, I read it, and it has some interesting promises at the beginning of the book. I didn't love them, but I was like, this is interesting. And I felt like the promises were not paid off. This book feels like three different books all smooshed together. So, and I wanted to point out and say, I've read some YA in the past year. I read the Twilight Saga. I read the Divergent series. I read, Fablehaven. So I'm willing to try new genres, new types, and there's romance in the Twilight Saga, and I love that. And then there's romance in the Divergent stuff, and I love that as well. It just, the Romantasy here just didn't work. So the first portion of the book, I'd say the first 150 pages, really is set up to be kind of this political situation where you have the main character, Delilah. Her father is the king of this land, and he is an awful, evil, brutal king. Literally, the first chapter is him beating her up and abusing her. And he executes his people. He's brutal to everyone. Everybody hates him, but everyone's fearful of fighting him. And so basically, towards the beginning of the book, Delilah is kind of setting people free and trying to get people to escape her father's yoke. And that was a really interesting promise. And I was thinking, okay, how is the author going to pay this off? How is the author going to, is Delilah going to do a coup to overthrow her father? Is she going to kill him and then take the throne for herself? Is Delilah going to try to marshal an army? Or is she going to, what's she going to do? And then about 150 pages in, the story completely takes a turn, and she realizes that the Fae are real and that they've just kind of been hidden, and so she ends up going to find the Fae and join the Fae. And I thought, okay, the reason she's doing that is so that she can gather an army to go back and combat her father, to come back and protect the citizens, because innocent people are dying left and right in her community. I thought that's what, the author's going towards. That entire political plot line is just abandoned. It's just gone. It does not really resurface. The trauma from it resurfaces frequently in the book for the main character. The trauma of that, certainly, but the actual plot line of solving the political issue does not show up again. And it's incredibly frustrating because that felt like the most promising element of this book. And I think that if it had focused on that, it might have been significantly better. So the middle portion of the book, from about page 150 to about page 350, so for about 200 pages, it's about Delilah meeting the Fae and her learning about the Fae and gaining abilities and kind of realizing, she's got special powers too, and her connecting with the Fae people. And this was not, the thing I was interested in, but I recognize this is a Romantasy. That's the type of thing that is in a lot of Romantasy, so I was willing to give that a shot. And then that part of the book is pretty much shunted to the side by about page 350. Now, it's present for the rest of it. It's not like the political storyline with the father where it's just abandoned. It's not completely abandoned, but it's certainly shoved to the side and is very much becomes a B-plot in the last 150 pages. The last 150 pages of this book is just a romance, and it's not even a romance. It's really just characters doing stuff the whole time. And that just became an incredibly frustrating read because, the rest of the book had shown such promise, and I was impressed for the first 350 pages that this book was much more appropriate. It didn't have, constant sex scenes or anything like that. So I figured, okay, it's going to be appropriate here. I can, wow, I'm very impressed with the author. And then the last 150 pages is almost nonstop, particularly the last 100 pages. And there was a plot line happening, but it just felt like every time they weren't in the middle of an action sequence, the characters are doing stuff. And it just was so over-the-top ridiculous and such a hairpin turn for the story. And she goes from resenting and hating the guy. Delilah goes from resenting and hating the male character Knox in the first portion of the book to absolutely being like enthralled by him and all this stuff. And that may be like a part of romance storylines, but it became the whole point of the book. And that just did not work at all. I think that with proper a second go through of the script of the manuscript, of balancing everything, including the political part of the storyline later in the book, of tying in the Faye storyline with the political storyline, and then spreading out the romance. I'm all for when a romance is included in a book, but when it's just non-existent for the first 150 pages, it's hinted at but nothing happens for 200 pages, and then the last 150 pages, it feels like it's the only thing you're reading on the page. It just is so uneven. And I understand that not everyone has my morals about sex outside of marriage and things like that, so I understand that is not necessarily going to be the way that authors write things. But it just was overbearing and just ridiculous, and I was just like, are you kidding me with this stuff? So really, I was just really frustrated by the book as a whole. I think it had potential. It had some promises. Now, I knew going into this book it wasn't going to be a 5-star read. I knew I wasn't going to love the book. I knew it wasn't going to be a top book, but I thought it has the chance to surprise me. And for the first 150 pages, I thought there was some really nonsensical, ridiculous stuff in there, like the main character getting beat up one moment and then going and like saving the day the next moment. It was like, I don't think she's a superhero yet. She hasn't unlocked her powers. How is she able to do this? Anyway, there was some nonsensical stuff, but I was willing to suspend some disbelief for it. But it's just as the book went on, it got more ridiculous. And again, my biggest problem is promises and payoffs. I reviewed another book recently where the book had made some promises and I wasn't sure on those promises, and the payoffs were so excellent and made up for the promises. This book's like the reverse. The book made some interesting promises and I was like, okay, here's where we go, and then just tanked the payoff. The payoff was just tanked, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. There is a sequel, and I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy or a 5-book series or 4-book series, however many the author's planning, and maybe that political storyline shows up later, but it shouldn't have just been just cut off midway through the book. It should have been present. We should have had more scenes of them planning how they were going to deal with it more, and it annoyed me. It frustrated me. So this book, as you can guess, is not getting a favorable rating from me. Maybe, women in my audience might enjoy it more than me because of the romance, but I did not. I enjoy romance done well. Like I think that the Twilight books were enjoyable. I thought the Divergent books were great, and the romance is a heavy part of those books. So I'm not against romance. I just am against the way that it was done here. And it was very frustrating. So I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 10. Had some interesting promises, some interesting ideas, but no, it was not a good book. So if you've read Heir of Broken Fate, let me know your thoughts. Did you like the book? Tell me why you liked it. Let me know those thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.